Joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show in his usual Monday spot on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line, the Green Light podcast host, two-time Super Bowl champ Chris Long back here on the program. How you doing, Christopher?
Rich, I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Oh, gosh. I mean, I don't even know where to start with you. I guess let's start with Sunday Night Football and your takeaway on this.
Why not?
Let's do it.
Why not?
Let's hit it. Because, Herbert looked terrific, and for the second straight game, this Miami offense wasn't anything close to what we've seen over the last few months. Your 2 cents on whether we're seeing a separation of powers here a little bit.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't think the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins are a good team. I'm going to tread carefully because anything negative you say about them, you hate the Dolphins. Like, I don't hate the Dolphins. The Dolphins are just not as good as people thought. It's December now. They're going to go to Buffalo this weekend in the snow. If they win that game on Saturday night, they're right back in the conversation among the NFL's elites, and you can write this off as a 2-game slump. But I think what you're seeing is like, hey, last week they go to San Francisco. I think the moment was a little bit too big for that offense. I mean, there were guys open. They missed on some stuff, and they ended up in the situation that they ended up in. And then this week, with a chance to rebound against a bottom 10 defense with Derwin James out, with Sebastian Joseph Day out, with multiple guys out, really score 7 points, essentially, for most of that ball game. Tyreek Hill doesn't come out of a rugby scrum with a football and run 60 yards for a touchdown. I thought, the Chargers did a really nice job of being aggressive on first and second down in coverage. And I mean, like, taking away, space a little bit, like not being afraid of those receivers, because the separation these guys have been getting all year has been just like criminal. And last night it wasn't there. And so the ball placement has to be perfect and things are sped up and the pressure's higher. I mean, this was a pressure spot for Tua. It was a pressure spot for Justin Herbert. A lot of people have been having this, frankly, really dumb conversation about who would you draft first, that sort of thing. Like, Tua's a good player and everything, but I think Justin showed why people are so enamored with him. And I'm not saying he's in that Patrick Mahomes tier. He's not. I'm not saying he's in the Josh Allen tier yet. He's not. I'm not saying I would take him over Joe Burrow, but what I am saying is he's in that tier where he's knocking on the door of being elite. And I do think this offense has held him back at times. I think Mike Williams and Keenan Allen not being on the field at the same time has held him back. But when you watch the throws he makes, the off-the-spot throws that he made all last night, and he's done it all year with pressure in his face and that sort of thing, but last night he was so efficient on a big stage where everybody's saying, hey, it's an either-or conversation, because I know if Dolphins fans came away from that game and Tua threw for 400 yards, they'd say he's a better player than Justin Herbert. This was just one game, but if you're Justin Herbert, you got to feel good about answering a lot of doubters because there was a lot of noise, especially the last 4 to 6 weeks, as the Dolphins were mowing down these really poor teams.
Well, I mean, the deal with the Chargers, and I said it earlier in the show, Chris, is that if they continue to play as well as they did Sunday night, then what we're going to see is Justin Herbert and this team on the road in the playoffs at Cincinnati or Kansas City or Buffalo, whichever one of those three that doesn't get the top seed. It's entirely possible, the 2 or the 3. That's where he's going to have to go, and that's where the rubber's going to have to meet the road. But at least he'll make the playoffs. Certainly, when you look right, I mean that's where it's kind of headed right now for that team if they're lucky.
Yeah. The AFC playoffs could be a lot of fun. I don't bank on it, although their games the remainder of the season I think are pretty winnable. The Chargers, if you know anything about the Chargers, and hey, evidenced by that fumble at the end of the game, Justin Herbert with a spectacular fumble recovery on the snap. I mean, that's probably his fault, but like he made up for it with that fumble recovery. That was crazy. And then obviously letting Tyreek Hill score in that really unorthodox way, and then almost dropping the onside kick. Like, Chargers, hold on to your butts, man. But like, it's the inconsistency that worries you. I thought Brandon Staley, who I've been critical of Brandon a little bit because I don't think this team has played to their potential at times. They played to their potential defensively and then some. I mean, he got those guys ready to play. And so hats off to him. And hats off to Justin Herbert. Again, this was a lot of people were watching for a very simple sports talk show TV reason. This quarterback against that quarterback. And, hey, you wanted it, you got it.
Chris Long here on the Rich Eisen Show. I will just mention the name, and I'll give you the floor. There's really no question for it because who the hell knows? In this you never know league. The two words are Brock Purdy. Go for it, Chris. There's no question.
Yeah, man. Listen, there's no secret at this point in the season. I think for a while people didn't realize this, but the Niners are a top 5 football team.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happened at quarterback has called that into question. Whether it was week 1, whether it's Jimmy's injury now. I think the most interesting thing about this, Rich, is like it proves how hard it is to evaluate these guys. First off, this is a system that people largely agree you don't need an elite quarterback to run it, right? Yet you gave up multiple picks, a ton of capital to grab a guy that people aren't sure about at this point in Trey Lance. And you draft Brock Purdy, very last guy in the draft, right? Mr. Relevant. And he looks like the guy you could have drafted in the first round. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. He's been on the roster. Like, you haven't heard a lot about him. I don't think the Niners knew that he would look this good. I think last week in Tampa with no time, or last week, rather, when they played the Dolphins, there was no time for him to prepare. And he played like he was a guest at somebody's house, would be the best way I could put it. Like, and a very good house guest, right? He
brought a bottle of wine, was very kind to everyone else. Sure, understood. Very polite. And
put everything back, made sure his dishes went in the sink or the dishwasher.
Mm-hmm, of course.
I like to put him in a dishwasher as a house guest.
You're first class. You're first
not
break.
in my house so much, I've been told. But like, he played this week like it was his house. He was comfortable. He was swaggy, Rich. Like that throw to Christian McCaffrey off his back foot. I mean, that was not a system throw. The throw he made to Deebo Samuel when he had to evade a rusher on a boot, and he turns around and he's got Schwenk in his face, and he evades him and throws the ball to Deebo Samuel. It's like these off-the-spot throws and the athleticism he showed on the scramble in the low red, like, you got people wondering, like, hey, are there some things physically? And he's got to play this out a little bit more, right? I don't want to jump out of the gym here. That you like better than you liked with Jimmy. Like, is their ceiling raised? I don't think it's a hot take question. We've got a few more weeks to figure that out. But I thought he played like this was his thing yesterday. And that was a great sign for them. And Trent Williams has talked him up, what his presence is like. So you got to feel good about Brock Purdy. That we'll learn more as the season goes on, but valuable experience for him. The teams he played in the first 2 weeks, huge game last week, and a really good defense this week.
Chris Long here on the Rich Eisen Show. Yeah, I know you don't have a crystal ball. We do actually have one here on the set, although I'm not going to break it out right now. It's really heavy. The winners of the Southern divisions, AFC and NFC South, 1 month from now, when we get through the final 4 weeks of the season, who are they going to be? Who's going to win the AFC South, and who's going to win the NFC South? Chris Long.
Ooh, that's I'm going to tell you who I'm pulling for. I'd have to pull the schedules out, but I'm pulling for the Panthers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I like chaos. The shame of it is this was the Saints division to take, and they just hadn't been able to get it together. But you want to root for Sam Darnold, man. I'm sure, there's a part of you, Rich, from your time that you have maybe your guy in Mike White.
No, I'm with you. I mean, the idea that Sam Darnold might spoil Todd Bowles' season is something a Jet fan can't really wrap. Like, I guess Adam Gase would have to flip the coin for that one. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And obviously, Vrabel and the Titans are still in control of that division. But what the Jaguars just did to them after Derrick Henry almost put 100 yards on him in the first half, and you think, here we go again. Jacksonville could go on a run. They still have another game against the Titans. They're just 2 games behind Tennessee. If they beat Tennessee, they'll just be, whenever they play them again, they'll have another one. They take on Dallas this week in a game that I think a lot more people will be paying attention to now. So I ask, who do you think? Who do you think when it's all said and done? What do you think, Chris Long? What do you think?
I'm going to go. I got to look at the math on this, but the Panthers, if they can beat the Bucs January 1st, this is their division to win. I think maybe. What are they, a game back from the Bucs? Or
correct. Yep.
Are they a game back?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and the Bucs have the Bengals this week. I mean, I'd be shocked if they win that game, and then they're at the Falcons in Week 18. You know, Desmond Ridder and some unknown, you know, kind of like, I don't know what the outlook is there, but there's no game that the Bucs are a sure thing in, right? I feel like the Panthers strangely have a higher floor right now. Like, they just do, because they run the football. And, I don't want to overreact to Sam Darnold for 2 weeks. He's got to play well. But if he plays like he's played the last couple of weeks, they could win this division. Now, on the other side of things, I think the Titans figure it out. The Jags have just been too inconsistent. I think the Titans figure it out. I don't want to be hot takey here, but knowing the way this thing goes, they'll probably beat the Jags.
Chris Long here on the Rich Eisen Show, and I am going to go there with you, and there is Tom Brady, and I mentioned it earlier in the program here, Chris, that he is obviously the GOAT and deserves all the leeway possible, but I always thought that when it was time for Brady to start thinking about other things than football, it wouldn't look like he's fallen off the cliff. But I do see some throws he normally makes being missed. I understand that there's some major issues up front. Donovan Smith cost them another touchdown yesterday that he was able to overcome in that comeback win the previous week in Tampa on the Monday night against the Saints. But you're sitting here, and Brock Purdy's beaten him by 28. And I know it's the Niners defense that really did it, not Purdy, but in front of 100 family and friends in his spot. There are things that are happening essentially in Brady's career that just don't happen, have never happened. And I'm wondering if it is time to either think about, if he wants to play another year, find a better spot than the one he's in, or this is it. What do you think, Chris?
I think he should keep playing if he wants to keep playing. I think, number one, he's earned that right. Number two, yes, he's still a good quarterback in this league. I mean, like, this situation is jacked up. It's been jacked up from the beginning of the season. I'm not saying that nothing's Tom's fault. Like, Tom makes mistakes. He's 45 years old or whatever he is, and he hasn't been perfect. But that line has been a problem. I think the inconsistency at receiver, the red zone problems, losing Gronk, some of the game planning, some of the decision making. Like, I'm not backing the bus up over the coaching staff or anything like that. I just think he's got a good year in him somewhere else. I don't think it's Tampa. I floated like a month ago the New England thing, because I think it'd just be fun, right? And I've seen the Tampa thing as a sinking ship for some time now. I think he should play next year. Like, this is not how he wants to end. I don't want to put thoughts in his mouth or thoughts in his head or words in his mouth. But you really want to end this way? I mean, nothing has gone right for him this year. It's just been such a turmoil kind of filled year for him. And I want to compliment him. Like, Dre Greenlaw ran up to him last night, and I know at times, like, he hadn't shaken people's hands after games, and that sucks, right? Like, you're like, come on. But I do think, by and large, he's showed class through this thing. He's stood up, stood tall, answered questions after games, put things on himself when it's been his fault. He seems to be a good teammate. He last night, Dre Greenlaw ran up and got the ball that he intercepted signed. And I just like, damn, I know that is not what you want to be doing, but he's just kind of kept the brave face on and done it. And I just want to credit him for that. I mean, some people are probably like, oh, we're going to compliment Tom Brady, but the guy deserves, I think, he deserves some positivity for the way that he's handled some of this stuff. And I think he's got another year or two in him.
Well, what about Vegas? What about them? That's something I'm hearing a ton about. Obviously a McDaniels-Brady reunion. Devontae Adams is something any quarterback it's someone any quarterback would want to play with. But by referring to Adams as a thing, I'm talking about who wouldn't want to play with the number one wide receiver, fill in the blank, in the NFL. Maybe that's a spot for Tom.
It could be. It certainly could be, but you got to think about it. Like, Tom Brady's done everything. So, like, at this point, if I'm Tom Brady, I'm thinking about, like, how does this story end, right? Because this is an amazing story. It's like one of the coolest stories in sports history. I mean, just like so unlikely in the first place. And, the winning all those rings in New England and then winning somewhere else, it's just been so wild. It deserves almost like I think a poetic finish, man. And I think going back to New England would be that kind of let's make it work one more time. I don't know if it's feasible. I don't know if Bill would be interested in it. But as a fan, every Sunday, dude, imagine us sitting there and watching Bill and Tom back together in a 4 p.m. spot, battling with the elites of the AFC. Sometimes it's like the grass is greener and then it's not as green as you thought it was, and I think he's experiencing that right now. Not saying it could just be them. It could be the Jets. There could be some weird twist here, but I like the New England thing. I'm just kind of attached to it.
And last one for you here, Chris Long, in the NFC, just looking at Week 14, and now, again, that it's late in the season, you could kind of read some tea leaves a little bit better than a Week 5 result en masse, if you will. But the Philadelphia Eagles just curb stomping the Giants. And they have been on a rampage, certainly since Thanksgiving weekend, 40-plus points a game on offense since that time. And then the Niners looking the way that they're looking. How do we not see the Eagles and the Niners in the NFC Championship game? Certainly with the Cowboys' result yesterday being something that they pulled out of their orifice. And I know you still have that belief in the Cowboys, not completely solidified because of the result last year in the playoffs and a game similar to the one that we just saw against the Texans. I know that's a lot of generalizations, but I'll put that in front of you for an answer.
Yeah, no, I think the Eagles are the best team in the NFC, right? I think the Niners are right there with them. The question is Brock Purdy, but if you look at their roster top to bottom, even with some of the injuries they've incurred, they're just a great team. And yeah, I have trust issues with Dallas, like probably most of America, including a lot of Dallas fans. So some people probably will get mad at me for saying that, but look in the mirror to your favorite team. You don't trust them either. So I just don't know. And I think also you look at Dallas and Philly the last 2 weeks, Dallas had a really sloppy game yesterday. You had Dalton Schultz drop. You got stuffed at the goal line. You had Turpin Muff. Dak didn't play that well, although he played well in that game-winning drive. And they squeaked by at home against Houston, and Philly did not play well the week before. Last week they were sloppy, bunch of penalties. They overcame penalties on 3-4 touchdown drives, a bunch of stuff, but they blew the doors off the Titans. And so I'm not boiling it down to, but this is the difference, and the difference between these two teams is Jalen Hurts is playing that good right now. So even when they're sloppy, he's that force that he's just you see him on the sideline. A.J. Brown and those guys are having a blast. They're joking, they're laughing, and they should be. And Jalen Hurts is just sitting there stone faced. You catch him on the sideline, he's just looking straight ahead. That dude has it between the ears, and he's making all the plays on the field with his arm, with his legs. The balls that he's thrown outside the numbers have been gorgeous this year. A.J. Brown's unlocked that whole thing, and right now you don't even have Dallas Goedert. And to mention that defense, Brandon Graham had 3 sacks yesterday. Hassan Reddick he just got double digits. First Eagles rusher to have double digits since 2014. A.J. Brown goes for 1,000. First one since Jeremy Maclin to go for 1,000. So pretty scary what they're doing. A lot of times during this stage of the season, you see one of these teams that's everybody's darling, and they come down to earth a little bit. This is where we start to see who people really are, and it looks like the Eagles are even more who we thought they were than we could have imagined, which is scary.
Who's on the pod this week, Chris? What do you got? Who do you have?
Oh man, Rich, seat of my pants this week,
Again.
man. I got Kyle on there. We got Bo Allen. We're gonna be reviewing the Monday night game and talking about our Army-Navy experience this weekend, which was awesome.
Oh yeah,
got to go see that game.
What was that like? For you got a story you want to tell?
Yeah.
From that, what do you got?
Well, I think fans are amazing because they actually are able to find their seats. I don't go to games a lot of NFL stadiums. Me and Bo Allen and my buddy Jason Van Camp, who's a Green Beret. So this guy could defuse a bomb probably. We couldn't find our seats for 12 minutes of game time. We did 2 laps around the link looking for. So I guess not only the pageantry, it's one of the coolest scenes in football. The weather was great. It was cold. It was beautiful out. The style of play is fun. It's different. And I tip my cap to fans because every time I go to an NFL stadium, I'm blown away at how people tailgate from 6 in the morning, get in the stadium, find their seats. They keep it going all night. I'm just fans are awesome, and I loved being a football fan this weekend.
So I am mandated as a follow-up question, Chris. So you couldn't find your seats because why? The folks of Army and Navy, who one would think follow orders and would be able to find their seats and sit where they're supposed to sit, or were you just a little bit swing oiled up going into that game?
No, I wasn't. Listen, when there's a Green Beret, not to throw my boy Jason on the bus, but when there's a Green Beret leading the way, I get in the back. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And me and Bo Allen, we played countless games in that stadium, but it's a totally different deal when you're in the concourse there's different levels, there's different stairways, there's different elevators. Man, it's confusing.
Okay, very good. I got the skinny. Thanks again, Chris. Appreciate your time. Everybody check out the Green Light Podcast with our friend Chris Long. Thanks for calling.
All right, Rich. Take it easy, man.
At Joel number 91 on Twitter, at La Flama Blanca 95 on Instagram. Chris Long on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.